Time for another joke.
Why was 6 afraid of 7?
Oh, here we go.
Why was 6 afraid of 7?
Why was 6
7,
afraid
8,
of 7?
9.
I've always wondered.
Because 7, 8, 9.
Do you need an explanation for that joke? Because 7, 8, 9.
Because we can only count to 4.
All right, and we're ready.
Okay,
All
like
right.
going? Okay, so 9 o'clock, this is our early clinic. If you're with us, good job for catching that we had an early clinic today. This is going to be Dr. Garner talking about fingerings. We're starting with woodwinds today, and then we will continue tomorrow at 10 a.m., finishing up woodwinds and going into brass. If you don't know Dr. Garner, he has been a director at WT for over 30 years. He retired and is the director emeritus, professor emeritus. But basically, he's just everybody's favorite person when we come to band camp, and we love having him around. He conducts a director's band here, and we try to get him to do clinics whenever we can to continue sharing his knowledge. So, Dr. Gary Garner.
Thank you all for being here. What Tamara does is just amazing. Her maiden name was Hawkins. I never did call her anything in college but Ms. Hawkins. That's the way we English people
These
speak.
people don't know that my maiden name was Hawkins.
Yeah, Ms. Hawkins. Well, woodwind fingering. It's maybe not quite as complicated as you think. It can be pretty complicated, all right. But essentially, every woodwind instrument is a tube with 6 holes in it. And what you see in the chart here is what I call the 6-finger note. 5 finger, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then up here it shows the notes that are produced on each of the woodwind instruments with 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 fingers. In the case of the 6-finger note for flute, as you see, oboe, clarinet, the upper notes of the register key. And let me interrupt myself for a moment to talk about the clarinet because it's a different beast. And I use the word beast advisedly. The clarinet is unique in that it will overblow only the odd-numbered partials of the harmonic series. That's why it doesn't have an octave key. It has a register key. So it'll overblow, if I finger, for example, a low A, the 5-finger note, let's see if this, I don't know how this is going to work at my best. I'm a very mediocre clarinet player. I have on an old fiber cell reed here, so the sound's going to be that of a pretty bad 7th grade clarinet player. Let's see. Yeah, it's a terrible sound. Sorry about that. So here is the 5-finger note. It's a low A. Now, if I depress the octave key, the third part, the register key, there's no octave key. If I depress the register key, the third partial is going to come out. That would be a what? E. Then, BJ, I missed you yesterday. And so what is the next partial you would expect? The third partial, what would be the next partial the clarinet would produce?
B.
The 5th, of course, which would be a C sharp. Same fingering, but we have a second, in effect, register key here, which is the 1st finger. We lift the 1st finger, and guess what? We got a C sharp. So, does that make sense? Okay. So, back to the 6-finger note. Oh, look at there. As you see, the 6-finger note on flute. Oh, one other thing about the clarinet. There are 3 registers on the clarinet. You need to know this. I hope you already do. And your clarinet players need to know this. This is fundamental. The lowest register on the clarinet, which extends from the bottom note, the low E below the staff, up through the throat tone B flat, 2nd line, 3rd line. That's called the what register? Yay, Shalom. Not spelled like it sounds, C-H-A-L-U, M-E-A-U. Why is it called that? Anybody know? The Shalom was a precursor to the clarinet, an instrument. So that's the Shalom register. Then, starting where you add the register key, which is the 3rd line B natural, and extending up through C at the top of the staff is the second register called the,
Clarion.
you guys are good, why are you here? The clarion register, okay. And they do need to know this, it's fundamental stuff, and obviously you do, that's a little, I'm thrilled to hear it. And then starting with the C sharp and on up is the
Altissimo.
altissimo.
Yeah.
Okay, shallow, clarion, altissimo, they need to know that. All right, so the six finger note, as you see, my newfound pointer skills here, on flute, oboe, and clarinet in the shallow, in the clarion register, this fixed finger note will produce a D. But in the shallow register, it's a G, as it is on the bassoon. It's a G, okay? 5 finger note, 3, 2, 1. And so I hope that is all fairly apparent. So what a woodwind instrument is, as I said, at its most basic, is a tube with 6 holes in it and a few other things to allow for accidentals. And I have an example of that. I brought with me my song flute. There are actually 7 holes, so you can play a low C. But what I'm doing is I raise fingers, I'm gradually shortening the air column. In order to raise a vibrating air column a half step, or a vibrating string a half step for that, you have to shorten the air column by what percent? Anybody know? 6%. Actually, it's approximately 6. It's actually 5.95%. So each time you go up a half step, you're shortening the air column by 6% or close to it. Or conversely, if you're going to lower a vibrating air column a half step, you have to extend the length of the vibrating air column by 6%. Actually, this played a rather significant role in my adolescent life. This has nothing to do with what we're about here, but I'll tell you a quick little story. When I was in junior high and in high school, my buddy Kenneth Kohler, Kenneth's a very talented guy, clarinet player, we formed a little duet. I played the tonet, which is like this. It's not quite the same, it's black, but essentially the same thing. And he played a bass ocarina. And we would play these silly songs and interrupt them with really corny jokes, as I told you, one of my specialties. I don't suppose you'd want to hear a sample of that, though, would you?
Sure.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, actually, we were discovered by the owner of the biggest music store in town, Mr. Tolzien. And it's now Tarpley's Music Company. It was Tolzien's at that time. But Mr. Tolzien somehow discovered us. I don't know how that happened. And he gave us a very fitting name, the Musical Misfits. And he took us around to civic clubs, hospitals, everything all over the Panhandle, doing our act. And one of our big tunes was, If You Knew Susie. I doubt if any of you know that song.
Oh, yeah.
Do you really? Who made it popular?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, Eddie Cannon. If you knew Susie like I know Susie, oh, 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 what a girl. So anyway, we would do this. Hey, did I tell you about old Joe Quattlebaum? No, what about him? We were walking down the street the other day, a steamroller came along, ran right over him, flattened him out like a pancake. Oh no, what'd you do? Well, I picked him up and rushed him to the doctor's office, but the doc was out to lunch and the office was closed. Oh, what'd you do then? Oh, I just slipped him under the door. Did I tell you, I rode my stick horse all the way from here to New York. Yeah. Yeah, when I got there, I was so tired, I felt like I walked the whole way. Okay, back to business. What can I say? Show business in my life. Actually, we recreated our action. You don't need to know all this. So, that's the basic stuff on woodwind instrument. Now, the next thing is, okay, yeah, special notes. think I have a flute with me by George, so I do. To raise the 6-finger note, well, yeah, special note about the flute. You know, I always analogize this to a doctor, a surgeon. How dare we presume to teach something that we don't really know much about? This is very fundamental to what we do. We need to know all the fingerings, including the alternate fingerings on these instruments. And as I was about to say, I always analogize this to a doctor, a surgeon. Imagine you're lying on a table in a surgery room, about to have your appendix removed. The doctor walks in, he's got a scalpel in one hand and a Gray's Anatomy in the other, looking under A. Let's see, appendix. Yeah. You got to make the incision about here. Maybe it's time to look for another doctor. Obviously, this person is not qualified to do the job that he's pretending to do, or maybe she. And it's the same with us. I mean, this is fundamental stuff. Mr. Jones, how do I figure F sharp on my center? Look it up. Check it on your fingering chart. Well, it needs to be better than that. Okay, back to the flute. So, the flute, and the 6 through 5 finger note, just goes right at C scale. Oh, gosh. Does it blow into this? Okay. Shortening the air column by 6% with every one of those notes. And the flute, this E flat key here, operated with the right pinky, should be down. Once you get to E flat, we raise the 6-finger note by adding that E flat key. Somehow working quite right. Okay, so this is so important on the flute. Once that pinky goes down, it stays down on every note of the instrument, with the exception of the middle D, up on the middle D, and then the very top 3 notes of the flute. High, 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 B flat, B, C. You see it did go down on the C, come to think of it. I didn't really mean to get into this, but since I did it, this has a B foot joint, as you hear, as you see. And it has this little key here. Anybody have any idea what this key is called?
Gizmo.
I got you, so good. Move up a chair. Yeah, this is the gizmo, and it's there for that one specific purpose, to produce a better high C. So you hear what happens when I put it down. Okay, so back to the E flat key. It's down on everything, well, the low C at C sharp, of course. But starting with E flat, everything down on everything except middle D and the top 3 notes of the flute. So if you watch the pinky, till I get up here, you see it stand out all the time. That's very fundamental. Let's see. Now, the oboe. All notes of the oboe in the 2nd octave are produced exactly like those in the 1st octave, except for, let's see, don't have the finger chart up there, but and that's okay. When we get to the D in the staff, 3rd line D, 4th line D, D, E, sorry, C sharp, D, and D sharp. Those notes are what? Stunting, half whole. You know what we're talking about, half whole? Okay, those are half whole notes. You can go into almost any bar and start an argument over how you operate the half whole. BJ's done it many times. Do you slide or do you roll? Well, you can get both answers. One of the great good fortunes of my life is I did study oboe for a couple of years when I was at USC with Bill Criss. Bill Criss was the top studio oboist in LA at the time. He was also reported to have been the all-time top student, the all-time most famous, most highly regarded oboe player in history. Anybody know who that would be? Marcel Tabito. Anyway, Tabito taught, he was a principal in the Pittsburgh Symphony. He was French, obviously, and renowned not only as a player but as a teacher. And Tabito, Bill Chris had Tabito at Curtis. Guys, yeah, in Pittsburgh. Anyway, so I had the good fortune to study with Bill Chris, but he was big on rolling, not sliding. However, there are other fine oboe players that say, no, you ought to slide. So it's not a big deal, I guess. But everything Bill said, Chris told me about the oboe was indisputable as far as I was concerned. But that's a whole different story. So we half hold on C sharp, D, D sharp, those three notes. Then when we go to E, top line E on the oboe, something new happens. What would that be? Okay, here's a question for you. How many octave keys does the oboe have? You need to know this.
One.
Two octave keys. I wish I had an oboe here to show you, but the back octave key is just like a saxophone or a register key on a clarinet. It operates on E, top space E, through G sharp. Then when you get to A, the second octave key is the one you use. The second octave key is right under the first finger. You hit it about the joint, knuckle here, okay? Then let's see, what other special thing? The clarinet, we've already talked about that. The bassoon. The bassoon is a special problem here. I use the word advisedly. I do think the bassoon has a very unfair reputation of being impossibly hard. It's not. I will tell you another personal story that I think bears on the point. When I became a beginning band director, I had played professionally a lot of flute, oboe, and flute, clarinet, and saxophone. And I played a little bit of oboe in the Air Force. I knew how that worked. The mere sight of the bassoon was enough to just make my heart pound in fear. It didn't look like anything I knew. So if I started to get on a bassoon, I'd say, here's your instrument, here's your fingering chart, bye now. But then I did that with Larry Glazner. Larry Glazner, he got it figured out on his own. No help from me, heaven knows. And we had, this is at Hutchinson Junior High, J.T. Hutchinson in Lubbock. No relation to Cassidy as far as I know. But you didn't get that. Never mind. Oh, somebody pretended to. So anyway, Larry was going like a house on fire on bassoon, unassisted. We had this amazing, challenging program going on with these kids. They were challenged crazy, and it was a pretty involved thing. You could extend one challenge a week. You could challenge anybody in the section. Your last year clarinet, you want to be first year? Challenge the first year. If you beat the first year, you're first year, and guess what? First year is now last year. So you had to give them a week's notice. You could challenge them on anything they wanted. It didn't have to be band music. It could be anything. And the challenge also consisted of the scale of the week out of the QED book. It's a great book. Every week it goes, I don't remember what the circle of fourths or circle of fifths, but here's the QED scale. So that's not that fast yet, but that's every week we do a different scale. And so the challenge would be, it would be also on whatever the scale of the week was. If it was first part, it had to be from memory. And then the full range of the chromatic scale. I think on one of those sheets you've got, it says in the back, notice to be played only if those who are serious about being real players. Yeah, is that it? Isn't that it?
Oh, last page.
Yes.
Yeah, read it for us, read it for us.
Warning, the following is to be viewed only by those seriously interested in becoming real players on their instrument. Step 1. Learn the chromatic scale up and down for the following range of your instrument. Practice as slowly as necessary to avoid mistakes. If you're uncertain of some of the fingerings, there are many reliable fingering charts online. Practice them every day with the metronome, gradually increasing the speed as you're able.
I couldn't agree more with that. The chromatic scale is, in my opinion, the wellspring of all technical development. Now, this sounds like I'm boasting, I promise I'm not. Back in my time, which was, ancient times, we did have television those days, it wasn't color though. I'd have 120 beginners every year, never varied more than 2 or 3 than that. We didn't have an assistant director, we didn't have life instrument classes. Just had 120 kids in there, teach them how to play. And I'm going to go off script here for just a moment. One of the most important lessons I think I learned was from James Mersel, who was music ed guy at Teachers College at Columbia, very famous. And my friend Ted Krieger was going to Columbia University, working toward a doctorate. He came home once at the end of one summer he'd spent up there and told me this story that Mersel was talking about how important it is to get kids playing right away. He said, and he drew this analogy. Suppose you're going to teach a kid to play a baseball, to throw a baseball. Are you going to first spend days and weeks teaching him exactly the grip, where the laces go, the aerodynamics of the ball? Don't think so. You're going to say, hey, kid, throw me the ball. Great, now try this. Yeah, good, now let's do this. And so he drew that analogy with an wind instrument. Are we really, now first of all, okay, back to another little personal story. I was so excited when I got my new flute. Shiny, bright thing, but it looked so darn complicated. I was pretty anxious about it. I went to bed that night. My mother came in to tell me good night. I was crying. She said, what's wrong? And I think it's the exact words. I said, it's that flute, Mama. I'll never learn where to put my fingers. It just looks so complicated. I was scared. I was excited and scared. And they were probably a little nervous too. My guy said he'd invested almost $100 in this thing, which was at that time no small thing. And they don't know, does this kid have any talent? I don't know my kid had any talent. I don't know I could ever play the radio. Have you ever heard that? Yeah. So the parents are apprehensive, the kid is apprehensive. So let's follow James Mersel's opinion, and I did. I took that to heart. So I made it a point. The first year, those 120 beginners, every day when they walked out of the room, they could all play a 3-note song. The flutes would go. And so, yeah, it sounded horrible. It's okay. But I could just imagine it coming home and doing that for Daddy, and Daddy said, Mama, Johnny can already play the song. So Johnny now is relieved of that great apprehension, and you've capitalized on that great excitement as well. That song sounds terrible. Doesn't matter. Now, I can imagine somebody might think, well, I don't want him to develop any bad habits. I'm going to spend 2 weeks, 6 weeks, some people do that, on just the mouthpiece alone. The clarinet, mouthpiece, and barrel alone. I don't want them to develop any bad habits. What you're going to do is just squash all that excitement, man. By the way, it takes a while to develop any kind of habit, bad or good. So the second day they come back in, okay, great, now let's do this. And we start going from there. They haven't developed any bad habit, but they learned how to play the song. And I honestly don't remember, there may have been, but I don't recall in all that time, with all those kids, anybody that couldn't do it. Sounded awful. That's not the point. And I just got off the point. Wonder what the point was. Okay, so we talked about raising the various notes on the flute. Now there are all the flute fingerings. Do you have that other thing there that shows the the flute third octave, or, well, it,
Next slide.
Yes.
can we get it on the screen?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, show him the page.
If it's on the thing, if it's on the handout, it's there.
Here.
'Cause this is-
Okay, there it goes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The flute, like a brass instrument, and like all woodwind instruments, other than the bassoon, will overblow all the partials of the harmonic series. So, let's get the partial. All the notes in the third octave, now as I said, the second octave, with a couple of exceptions, the D and E flat in the second octave are like the lower octave, except the first finger is up. It's in effect an octave key. Now we get to the third octave, and that's what we have here. Yeah, third octave fingers on the flute. They are all, of course, overtones of something in the first octave. So what you see in this chart is the note itself, and then a black note below it showing what the fundamental is. So the high D is actually a third partial of G. And you'll vent somewhere. In effect, a register key. The vent in this case is the first finger. By the way, I beg you, please, if something is unclear, stop me and ask a question. Are we okay with this so far? Okay, moving now. The next several notes are all fourth partials. E flat is an overtone of low E flat. And we vent with A flat or G sharp key. High E, fourth partial of low E. Vent with the third finger. I think this is by far the easiest way for them to learn, is to say, okay, now high E is fingered thumb, 1, 2, 4, 5. No, finger low E and raise your third finger. That's the fingering for high E. High F, fourth partial again. Raise the second finger. F sharp, same thing. High G, same thing. Fourth partial. And the vent with the thumb. And that's all shown here. Now, starting with the high G sharp or A flat, we have two vents. It's another fourth partial, but we vent now. With the thumb and the first finger, like low A flat, raise the thumb, first finger, you got A flat. Now, high F, don't get too excited, it's our first fifth partial, okay? High A, rather, it's fingered like low F, and we vent with 1 and 3. And so, you see on the chart here,
We're switching computers, I'm sorry. The handout didn't get uploaded, so.
say what?
We're switching computer screens, so it'll be just a second. Or go back to this one for a second.
Oh, okay.
Just wait.
Yeah, there should be a high F there somewhere.
Is it there?
A high
Is that the
A
one
is
you
what I'm
need?
looking for.
Second
line,
row.
last measure?
Yeah, second line, last measure.
Okay, whoa, yeah, there's a high A, okay. Yeah, so this is like low F, except we vent with 1 and 3. Oh, I made a terrible mistake. Oh, well, no, not really. The thumb is, yes, I did. Rats, the thumb is down. I'm so sorry. That should be black right there. So you can fill that in. So high A is like low F. Okay, moving on to high B flat. Okay, here's high B flat or A sharp. And you see, it's another fourth partial. So we have, again, two vents. And in this case, there are 3 ways to figure B flat. But we vent with the first trill key. There are 2 trill keys on the flute. That's the first trill key right there. And we don't have the first finger down. And this being one of the top 3 notes, you see there's no pinky. If we did have a gizmo on it, we'd have it down on the C. And then high B natural, overtone of low G, and we vent again, 2 vents, with opening the 2nd key and depressing the 2nd trill key. And finally, high C, overtone of low F. So finger F, raise the thumb, add the G sharp or A flat key. If you have a gizmo with the B foot, you can do that. Now this, I'm heaping a lot of information on you in a very short amount of time. Please ask if something is unclear. We okay? Is it time to administer a test? I could pick some people out randomly and ask them for a fingering. Let me ask my percussion friend back here, just give a quick. If you look around, give us a quick overview of the flute. Not in detail, just kind of an overview.
In what regards?
Fingering.
Oh. Well. Yeah. So I don't know what you would like
Oh,
me to say.
yeah, that's too vague a question. I'll give you a pass on that. Here is the thing, though. Do you know there has been validated scientific research showing that we human beings have an attention span of about 7 minutes at max. And then I have a great book at home called Teaching with the Brain and Mind. It's not the only place that said this. That, and I always kind of felt this by instinct. That I've always said, I thought the ideal band rehearsal goes bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. And so you've got this 7 minute attention span, at which point the brain needs a little opportunity for resting and processing the information that is received. Otherwise, you just get this overload of information and you get through it and you don't remember much, if any, of it. And that's the reason for the bad jokes, by the way. It's not without purpose. So most of the jokes I've gotten are from other kids. Little girl in Clovis, you've probably heard this. Now this was a middle school kid too. Also a little girl trumpet player. She said, "What's red and bad for your teeth?" I said, "I don't know what." She said, "A brick." Now, I just totally wasted 10 seconds of your time, of our valuable time to get it, or maybe not. Maybe your brain was resting and processing while we did that. And often I will ask them for a joke. Their jokes are always better than mine. At our WT band clinic, which we've done every year for many years, I won't even tell you what the school was we had a band here from another city. And I said, "Hey, who's got a quick joke?" This cute little flute player raised her hand. "I've got a joke." She told the filthiest joke I've ever heard. The band loved it. I clinicked that same band last year, I guess. And I told them that story, and one of the boys said, "Do you remember the joke?" No, actually I don't, and you're not going to hear it if I did. Okie dokie. So, so much for the flute. And, no, it's not really quite so much for the flute. We need to know the alternate fingerings too. There are not many alternate fingerings on the flute, standard alternate fingerings. But the notable one is B flat, the 2 B flats, and one in the staff and one right below the staff. Would be B flat 4 and B flat 5. Middle C is C4, right? So the C above the staff would be C5. The one in the bass clef would be C3. So that's to identify the octave. Okay, so B flat 5 and B flat 4. They're both fingered exactly the same. But there are 3 ways to finger them. The one that most people teach first is the so-called 1 and 1. So here's B flat, I want to lower the half step. By the way, this is not a good hand position. I'm just doing this so you can see what I'm doing. Want to lower the half step. I depress the first finger on the right hand. Perfectly good B flat. Another way is not this finger, but this double thumb key. That makes a B flat. Ordinarily, it's not advisable to slide, but there's still a third way. This key right here is called the lever. It's right above finger 4. We think it 1, 2, 3 on the left hand, 4, 5, 6 on the right hand. Right above finger 4 is the lever. So, and they all have their uses. I encounter a lot of bands where the flute players just use that one-on-one fingering all the time. And if you're going to use only one, and I don't advise that at all, but theoretically if you did in band, since we're in flat keys most of the time, it ought to be the thumb B flat. So I'm playing the F scale. I just park my thumb on the B flat key and leave it there as long as it's down. Take it up on C, of course. Don't have to worry about B flat. Now, if I were to do that same thing and did the 1-and-1 B flat, oh man. Now, I did it as well as I could. It's pretty darn bad. So there's an example of where you use the thumb B flat. There are 2 notes on the flute you cannot have the B flat down on. One is high F sharp. See what happens when I go from the B key with the thumb to the B flat. The other one is high B. You see what happens there, okay? So those 2 notes, you can't have it on the thumb B flat. Now the third B flat is the lever. Maybe the one that is least used, but for example, let's suppose I had to go G to B flat to B natural. Well, I sure wouldn't want, especially if I was slurred, I wouldn't want to do 1-and-1 at all. I did that better than I meant to. That is so easy to do, that little blip in there. I did that as well as I could, and it was awful, but no sweat. But what if I have to go to a B natural now? Well, by and large, we don't want to slide. So what we do, I just put the, not just me, put the B, lever down on G. I've got B flat already made. No problem at all. You try that with any other B flat and it's going to be a royal mess, I can guarantee you. Any question about the flute? Yes, sir.
Sorry if, pardon my ignorance as a brass player.
No, please, please.
How do you tell a younger student with the alternate fingerings in any way, how do you have them write it in the score? I mean, like that off the B flat, is there a quick way?
Well,
to
I'd
do it?
probably just have put an L above that for lever,
Okay.
or a T for thumb.
Okay.
I rewrite the beginner, the first 8 notes that they get. I give them a different fingering chart with the book and put the thumb B flat on there for all their notes.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know, when I was a beginning flute player, the only one I knew was the thumb B flat, which is unusual. I didn't know if there was any way you could do it. But I remember one of the early solos I had was called The Pipes of Pan. And it starts with a little chromatic scale going back and forth over a minor third from A to C. Diddle-dee-da-da, diddle-dee-da-da, diddle-dee-da-doo. And so with my thumb, I'm going. I can still do that just great, but it really ought to be with the lever. 1-and-1, oh my word. Forget, that's the best I can do it, I promise. So they all have their place, and the kids need to know all 3 of them. So now, to be sure, there are other, I don't know if you could call them alternate fingerings. This is another thing a lot of band directors seem to be blissfully ignorant of. I'm sure it would apply to nobody in this room. But if you see a trill in a woodwind part, and you don't know how to do it, but if you hadn't noticed, we're living in the day of the internet, look it up and write the fingering down in the score. Sometimes it's going to be a half-step trill, sometimes it'll be a whole step trill. You want to be sure they're using the right fingering. But those trill fingerings are good for more than just trilling. A lot of times in technical passages, suppose you had to go really rapidly from, well, here's an example. This is from the boarding Polovetian dances. Can you imagine doing that with the regular fingers? Those are trill fingers. No way you're going to be able to do that with the regular fingering. So the trill fingerings are incredibly useful for technical purposes a lot of time, as well as for actual trills. Now, band directors, especially brass players, and I don't mean any particular criticism of brass players, but that's kind of, woodwind players understand that. Brass players don't have the same kind of situations to confront. Well, there are certain examples, but those trill fingerings are really important. So you see something like, so I'm trying to think of an actual band example. But I don't know, if you're going, so both of those things, I'm going, trill finger. Just have to hit one key. Otherwise, I'd have to put all these fingers down and these two fingers down. It's awkward as all heck. So, you can't do that without trill fingers. We okay? Mm-hmm. All right. How's our time?
I was about to write you a note. 20 minutes if we go all the way till 10.
Well, you're
10
the,
to 20 minutes.
you're the boss.
If let's go to 20 minutes, we're gonna go till 10. If you need to go to observe someone and you really want to get there at 10, just sneak out. But I'd like to go till 10. 20
Okay,
minutes.
all right. Well, since we have a clarinet here, let's talk about this a little bit. So the clarinet, we know the 6-finger notes, right? Again, pardon the sound. The 6-finger notes. Now, we need to have a way to raise each of those 6-finger notes, well, to play the chromatic, what I call the black keys, like on piano, the flats and sharp. So, as with most other woodwind instruments, to raise the 6-finger notes a half step. Now, we've got 4 pinky keys here on the left, right side. It's the top one. Spare that sound, I'm so sorry. Or with the register key. G to A flat, D to E flat with the register key down. 5-finger note. Now the 4-finger note on the clarinet, to go from the 5-finger note to the 4-finger note is a half step, as it is on the clarinet and, the saxophone and the flute. So now to raise the 4-finger note a half step, we've got a couple of options. Who's a brass player that can tell us what those 2 options are? Any brass player?
What was the question again?
How to raise the 4-finger note a half step on a clarinet? We got 2 ways.
The four.
Four finger.
You can do the forked fingering or switch to two.
Good.
Yeah.
What do you play?
Trumpet.
Trumpet player just rose a little bit in my estimate. Yeah, exactly. He said the 4-finger. Now there are 2 keys that are sometimes referred to as either the banana keys or the sliver keys. You're a clarinet player, Tamari, what do you call it?
I call it banana.
I call it banana too.
Yeah, well, it's more descriptive. Kids can relate to that better. So, yeah, our trumpet friend is exactly right. So, what would determine whether we're going to go same sound, same pitch? How do we know which one to use? Is there another brass player?
Chromaticism.
Sir?
Chromaticism.
Chromatic is the 4-finger, yeah, okay. gonna go A to B? Don't think so. Okay. Oh. Honk, 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 honk. Okay, so that takes us then to the three-finger note, and as on the oboe, the saxophone, and the flute, to raise the three-finger note, we depress a key with the left pinky. And it's this highest one right here. There are a lot of left pinky keys, but it's this one right under the third hole. Okay. That takes us to the two-finger note. How many ways? This is a trick question.
3, or they're, yeah.
What are they?
It's the side 2 keys, then it's 1, 2, 3, then it's that key right there, the other banana key.
Yeah.
Then the third option is actually thumb 1 and 1.
Yeah. Actually, there are two others.
Oh, wow, okay.
Could be either one. Those are all bad sounds.
Yeah.
And you want to avoid them if you can. But there might be situations where you do that. Suppose you're going, then there would be rare cases when you'd want to use one of those fingers. But the two really acceptable ones, as he correctly pointed out, are the bottom side key or the banana key. Now, I've known a few, even a professional clarinet player too, that have actually had this banana key removed because they never use it. That sort of conventional wisdom at one time for a lot of people was that's what you do in a chromatic scale. I don't think most clarinet players, it's okay if you want to do that, it works fine. Most clarinet players probably do this. The only time when I see that this banana key is absolutely essential is if I were playing something like F to F sharp. This is another alternate finger. F to F sharp with the side finger. And then I had to go to E flat. That's a little awkward. Oh, just doing this other one, that's really tough. So, in very rare cases, it can be used. Okay, so we're, all right, raising the two-finger note, right? Then the one-finger note, of course, is E in the chalumeau and B natural in the clarion. We lift the first finger, and now we're playing first bass F in the chalumeau or high C in the clarion register. Now, to raise a stay with the chalumeau, to raise the thumb note, F, a half step, we've got two possibilities. One is add the bottom two side keys. This is the chromatic fingering, and if you do use this in a chromatic scale, the idea is, this is sort of a basic rule of woodwind fingering. Keep it on the same hand when you can. And move the fewest fingers possible. If I go to F sharp, then I only have to move one finger. But if I go to F sharp the other way, which is the first finger only, this would be extremely awkward. I'm not trying to do that. That's about as well as I can do it. So both of those are good fingerings, but in whatever the right context is. So if I'm playing a D scale, of course. Tell me the truth. Are we okay with that? Promise. Okay. That takes us then to the open G. There's a reason they call it that. No figures. I wish I had a stool. I had a dumb accident. It's been 5 years ago now. 6, 7. Out in my backyard. It's a real steep slope down to a little creek out behind the house. I was out there pulling out a little dead tree that didn't need to be done. but it would turn out to be a very stubborn tree, and I tugged and tugged, and I finally pulled it out. And when I went rolling down the hill. Ended up, I spent 3 days in bed thinking I've got the worst pull muscle in history. Turned out what I really had was a broken back. And if I stand too long, it lets me know that. But I'll tough it out here. Okay, we're at open sheet. Now, the throat tones, the so-called throat tones in the clarinet, include how many notes?
Like 3, 4.
4. Good. You guys are so good.
Yeah.
G sharp, open G. G sharp, A,
And
just
then-
this top key only, right? And when you do depress that A key, get it at the bottom of the side of the finger. So then when you go to a B, all you have to do is just roll this back and forth. If you're up here, you're in big trouble. Okay. G sharp, A. Then, how many B flats? 2 B flats.
Yeah.
One is just adding the register key to the to the A key. The other one, which is a better sound, is the second key from the top on the right. You see how much better that sound is even on this reed with this player? Now this is true on all woodwind instruments. A lot of times there are special things you can do. I don't know a first-rate clarinet player who plays a sustained A in the staff with nothing but the A key. They'll nearly always add the second and third fingers. You hear the difference in the sound? Much better sound, a little lower pitch. And usually some combination fingers, and it varies a lot, on the right hand. For me, I like to add fingers 4 and 6, or 1 and 3 on the right, plus the F key. That's the best sound for me. Okay, that takes us through the bridge, through the break, up to the break, so-called break. Maybe that's an unfortunate terminology for kids. I'm tempted to talk about crossing the break a little bit. There's a lot of ways to teach that, but let's let that go at least for the moment. So now we're in the clarion register. Yes, ma'am.
Just really quick, on your B flat, on your chart, you said it was the second one down, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it say it's the first one?
Yeah, the chart does show the first one.
Bottom line.
That's
the
a
red.
C, right?
Yeah, that's wrong.
Yeah, what did I do with the pointer? Here it is. Okay, here's the note.
B flat.
Oh my gosh.
Bottom
Oh,
line.
that's a G flat.
No,
That scared me to
bottom-
death.
That one.
Oh, it's still wrong. It ought to be that one.
Yeah, so it's the
Oh,
that's a
rats,
C.
thank you, and I'm so ashamed.
Yes.
Please forgive me. It's not that one at all.
That could be used as an alternate.
Well, the top key is used things if you're going to trill A to B. Or if you're going to go B flat to C, you use both of them. But oh darn, I thought I had really proofread that carefully. Obviously, I was wrong.
Dr. Garner, I'm making notes.
Yeah.
And if you want to correct it, I can re-upload onto the website and they can download it again later.
Yeah,
if
I'll tell you,
want.
making these charts is no simple thing.
Yeah.
But
Oh, you can't just go in and edit that.
no. Well, I can. I've got to go.
Okay, that's okay then.
Oh, okay.
These guys can fill it in,
Just
and if they're watching online, they can listen
Yes.
and fill it in themselves, so,
Okay.
thanks.
Oh, I forgot. We're online too, aren't we? Hi there. How you doing? Heard any good jokes lately?
Don't ask the internet.
Oh, we are in the Clarion Register, baby, and everything in the Clarion is exactly as it is in the Shallow. same old stuff, okay? Now, we get to the altissimo. And we've already talked about C sharp. Low A, add the register key, E, lift the first finger. And this is something kids have a hard time with. I don't know why band directors don't seem to understand this. When you're slurring up to those altissimo notes, you get a lot smoother slur if you'll half hold. Just roll the finger forward. Does that make sense? Okay. Then it depends on the player. The altissimo notes sometimes can tend to be rather flat. So a lot of fingering charts will show you add the E flat key, right pinky. I always refer to it as, there are two layers of keys, top layer, bottom layer. I always refer to it as top layer, top key. Okay, that's the E flat key. So if the D's a little low, my observation has been that about 4 out of 5 clarinet players do that, and about 4 out of 5 shouldn't, because it often makes it too sharp. But it depends entirely on the player and the instrument. Then, the fingering pattern remains the same. It's the same as when we were going. Then, oh yeah, I didn't finish the thought I had started earlier. Back in my junior high days, which I look on with the greatest fondness, I still live in a fantasy world where, it's true, where I'm the band director at J.T. Hutchins Junior High School. Can you believe it? I still have contact with some of those kids. They're all in their 70s now. Kids, not so much anymore. Oh, they were glorious days. You know what? Never mind. So, I would try to send every kid home every year, and there were very few exceptions, able to play the chromatic scale for the full range, clarinets up to the high G, flutes for 3 octaves, saxophone full range, low B flat up to high F, oboes up to high E flat, D, E flat. No, oboes up to, E flat. Bassoons up to G. The brass players, at least the trumpets up to G, and if their chops would permit, and many of them would, higher than that. Full range of chromatic scale. They can all do it. So I just expected them of it, to do it. And they did. And you know what else they can do? First year, they play all 12 major scales. All 12. You could do that. You have to ask them. You have to know how to teach it. It's helpful if you know the fingerings too, by the way. And as I said before, for me, the wellspring of all technique on wind instruments is chromatic scale. They ought to be able to play the chromatic scale in their sleep. I will often do this in a clinic. Say, find a kid up on the front row who's wearing shoes that were tied. Do you remember tying your shoes this morning? No. Or if I do, well, when you tied them, were you thinking, okay, now I need to make a loop of this string, and then I need to move this string around there, and you go through? No, of course they were. Why not? Because you've done it so many times. It's infused in your muscle memory. And so it is the chromatic scale. And I always tell them, I don't know. Give me a scale, Landon, any scale at all.
F sharp major.
F sharp? I wasn't thinking about that. My brain said, hey, fingers, give me an F sharp scale. Fingers said, got you covered, baby. Why? Because, by the way, I still practice every day. Why? Because it is so darn much fun to play a musical instrument. And I don't want to lose that. I'm not the player that I once was, but I still do fairly well. And yeah, I got the same scale routine I do every day. That takes me to A minor. I'm not thinking about fingerings. I'm not thinking about anything. And you know what I do? Now, this is not just me. This is the nature of the human being. I'm watching television while I do that. I have some headphones. And I'm getting really depressed watching the latest news. But this makes up for it. This is a little aside. I wasn't going to be in band. Come on. No, why would I want to do that? We started band I grew up here in Amarillo. We started band in the 7th grade. I went to Sam Houston Junior High School, and my two best buddies, boy, we were joined at the hip. Dick Brooks and Benny Bruckner. Dick and Benny joined band. Why not want to do that? And boy, the school had been going on for a few days, and they twisted my arm really hard. You gotta get band. I said, okay. So I went to Mr. Eads, the band director, and said, you got anything I can play? He said, well, baritone sax, all we got left. Here it is. I said, oh, okay. The bigger I was. I would try to carry it home on my bike every day to practice. I had about 3 or 4 wrecks on the way, there and back. I finally gave up practicing because it was too hard on me and the bike and the very sax. And I wasn't making any progress. And Mr. Eads said, hey, you're either going to have to practice or you can't be in band anymore. Well, by now I really want to be in band. A bunch of cute girls in there. So I said, okay. I went home and I said, Daddy, I may need to buy an instrument. He said, well, what do you want to play? I said, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And I looked around the next day, the smallest thing I saw was, guess what? Most poor man. I came home and said, I want to play the flute. And it was that night that I went to bed crying. I told you about it. That every day, okay, I'll just finish off by the point I was getting to. I swear, every day, I'm practicing down in my little music dungeon, as I call it, little cellar, and at least once a day, they're both gone now, Dick and Benny. I say, thank you, Dick and Benny. They changed my trajectory of my entire life. Otherwise, I'd probably be selling pencils out on Main Street in Amarillo. Thank you, Dick and Betty. Thank all of you. We'll to be continued tomorrow, I guess, huh?
Yes, 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.